Today, I'm going to be coding a tornado animation in 1 minute, then 10 minutes, and finally 1 hour. Be sure to let me know down in the comments what challenges you want me to attempt next. Enjoy the video! So 1 minute is going to be pretty tough. My game plan is to create a static shape that looks like a tornado, because there definitely isn't enough time to add any dynamic elements. I'm going for a gray upside-down triangle with some regular horizontal slits, so it looks more like the rings in a tornado rather than just a single triangular block. It's not going to look amazing, but I think this is all we realistically have time for. I also don't think we're going to need any JavaScript for this one, since it's just a static figure that can be created purely with CSS. Just finished the alternating strips by creating a repeating black and white gradient. Now we'll draw the actual triangular polygon using the clip path property. I'm also blurring the lines a bit and making them slightly transparent to give more of a windy effect. And that's 1 minute done. So it's a bit small, and I don't know if you can count this as a tornado, even if we zoom in. But for 1 minute, I guess I can't really complain. Hopefully we can do more with the 10-minute tornado though. So 10 minutes is actually long enough to create something dynamic, and tornadoes are dynamic in nature, so let's do that. I'm starting by adding a light vignette to the background, so it's not just black. Nice. Now let's start with the actual tornado. Rather than just creating an upside-down triangle, I'll actually create something more tornado-like this time. My idea is to have actual rings stacked on top of each other that sway side to side, like a real tornado. The first thing I'm doing here with the background is drawing the floor. Rather than just having a floating tornado, I want the tornado to actually move along the ground. Once we have the draw background function, we need to add this to the main animation loop, which will render each frame in our tornado animation. The ground is pretty dark and almost blends in with the background, but we'll get back to that later if we have time. Now let's do the tornado rings. We'll start with 30 rings, with the largest ring at the top and the smallest ring at the bottom. The rings will be spaced out uniformly and remain static for now. We'll also decrease ring thickness and brightness as we move toward the base of the tornado. Each ring will be rendered as a hollow ellipse. We're cutting it close, so let's see how this looks once we render it inside of our main animation loop, and then we can work on finishing up the swaying movement. That looks alright. Certainly more tornado-like than the first version. Let's add the dynamic element now. So to add the side-to-side movement, it's actually pretty straightforward. We can set the x position of each ring to be based on a sine function, since the sine function naturally flows in this wave-like pattern. To ensure that the entire tornado doesn't just move together, since we want the rings to be staggered in terms of movement, we also pass in the ring number t to the sine function. I think this one turned out quite decent. I definitely could have improved the floor's visibility and added more rings to reduce the gap size, but overall, I'm happy with this. On to the 1 hour tornado. First, I'm starting off with the background and floor. This time, instead of just creating a dark floor that blends in with the background, I'm just going to create a glowing strip so it's much easier to see. Eventually, we'll render the tornado directly on top. I'll also take care of basic page setup at this stage, like resizing the canvas and setting the animation loop. Most of the background changes will become more visible once we add the tornado. With the floor done, we can move on to the tornado itself. I think the 10-minute animation was good. However, it failed to capture the chaotic nature of a real tornado. The animation was almost too perfect and smooth. So for this one, I want to go for a more chaotic, disorganized look. I want the rings to fluctuate and not all follow the same symmetric sine pattern. To do this, I'll add a bit of randomness to the ring movements. Instead of just having the rings sway side to side, I'll make them wobble and jitter as well. I'll keep the elliptical pattern and decreasing thickness and brightness as we approach the base of the tornado. Let's see how it looks once we render it. Something is not right. First of all, it's upside down. It's also not properly rotated, and there is zero movement in the rings, which leads me to believe there are a few bugs in my code. Let's do a little debugging to see if we can find what's wrong. I realized I hadn't set the tilting rotation movement at all, so once that was fixed, the tornado at least had some movement. However, it was still upside down, and there was zero side-to-side movement, so I had to continue doing a bit of debugging. Eventually, I found that I was accidentally setting the Y position of the rings to incorrectly be the radius value of the rings. This fixed the upside-down issue. Okay, so it's looking alright, but it's a little too chaotic. Although I wanted to make it a bit more disorganized, I think we still need some of that old side-to-side swaying action. I'm adding back the X position fluctuation that was based on the sine function, just like how we had it in the 10-minute version. The only difference is that this time, it will be combined with the other random tilt and wobble movements. There we go. It's starting to come together. Let me adjust the brightness levels as we move towards the base of the tornado. Okay, that's much better. Right now, the rings are kind of sparse, and you can easily see straight through the tornado, so I'm going to increase the ring count. Nice! I think the tornado itself is looking pretty good right now. We still have 30 minutes, so I want to add some debris within the tornado. If we're able to add some swirling debris inside the tornado, I think this will really reinforce the circular movement of a real tornado, which is very difficult to capture with just the ring animation alone. For the debris itself, I'll keep it simple. I'll just render a bunch of small dots at random Y positions inside the tornado, then just have them orbit around the rings. I'll keep them within 55% of the tornado radius at all times. I think the debris adds a lot to the animation. The last thing I want to add is some wind particles, so let's get started on that. These should be pretty easy to add. I'll just have some thin, vertical lines moving across the screen, from left to right. Then, with the remaining time, I'll add a few finishing touches. I'll first fix the background so it's not just a black screen, and then I'll play around with the tornado movements to see what creates the most natural result. Excited to see how the final result turns out for this one, after 1 full hour. I'm quite happy with how this one turned out. I think the debris and wind particles really add to the animation, and you can definitely see the improvement from the 10-minute animation. As always, thank you guys for sticking around to the end, and I hope to see you in the next one.